Joining me on the show, Stephanie Martin of the Free Speech Union, updating us on what's happening in this area. So firstly, a welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, now let's talk about this bill because it's an amendment bill. Tell us what it is and why we need it.
Sure. Well, you really actually just spoke straight into what I think is the heart of the problem just a second ago is, our universities, as you said, are supposed to be bastions where these sorts of conversations, where we learn to think well, where we learn to write well. These are the functions that we sort of expect a university to play. And unfortunately, we've just seen increasingly over time, it's become more apparent that the what's already guaranteed by legislation, actually, what should be the lawful responsibility of universities to uphold academic freedom has just not been being upheld. So we've seen increasing sort of survey data, testimonies, situation scenarios, deplatformings happening with increasing frequency over the years that have shown us that we really have got a problem. And so the intention with this amendment bill is to tighten some of the legislation around academic freedom to ensure that it is actually being upheld, because we've got serious cause for concern here. I mean, the Free Speech Union has run two of its own surveys in 2022 and 2023 that showed some pretty concerning results. We're looking at less than half of academics feeling free to question and test received wisdom, for example, or to raise differing perspectives and argue against the consensus. The 2023 version has sort of faced some criticism around sample bias, but actually the results that we see in that survey are consistent with what we're seeing across the board from a range of different evidence. So we know that there's a problem here. So the intention of this legislation is to address that.
Okay, so uh, with this legislation, what key changes would you want seen in it?
Sure. So in general, we support the legislation. We think that it's necessary. We're really happy to see it in Parliament. We've been involved in the process of sort of campaigning for it to be introduced. And so generally we are very supportive. There are a few things that we think, little tweaks around the edges sort of thing, that could be made just to strengthen it up a little bit. So some of the recommendations that we're making around that are just avoiding specifying elements of free speech statements. So one of the things that's in the amendment bill is requiring universities to develop their own free speech policies. This is a good thing. And so there are various aspects, I suppose, of these free speech policies that universities are going to have to sort of show alignment with.
Mm-hmm.
One of these that we're a little bit concerned about is just the specifying elements of free speech that we think could be used to suppress the expression of ideas and opinions. So like one of the phrases that's in it is around conversing like respectfully,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just concerned that that might be used to undermine. So we're really wanting to see just a little tweak to the language in that we think would probably address that concern. Tightening the clause relating to institutional neutrality and just being really clear about what's meant by institutional neutrality. And also, one of the requirements that's in there that's really great is that annual reports are going to have to be produced by the universities. And we're just wanting to clarify and ensure that those are made public so that, our wider society can have access to the information about what's going on in the universities.
Mm. So when we talk about this legislation, perhaps looking at the scope of it, does it apply to other educational institutions and schools as well?
There are separate aspects of this amendment bill that relate to schools, but those aren't kind of covered by the academic freedom components, which are
Right.
what we've been focusing on with our academic Inter-University Council on Academic Freedom, so our professional council for academics. So we've really focused in on what's going on in the universities and the university culture, which is something that we've been advocating for a number of years now.
What seems interesting to me is that, when we talk about university culture, and when you were talking about, some of the ideas from the beginning, about how perhaps freedom of speech has been stifled, it feels like that is not just a university culture, that's a cultural issue. So, how much does what happens at our university actually trickle to the rest of society, or is it sort of the other way round?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I do think to some extent it runs both ways.
Mm,
I very much think that, I mean, the part of the reason why we've taken such an active interest in the universities is because we see them as culture changing institutions. So we see and recognize the place that universities hold in society in terms of sort of generating new knowledge and working in that space, but also, universities now are the centers in which many, many, many professions are trained.
mm,
So if we're concerned about sort of ideological capture or the kind of culture that we're seeing in a variety of different professions, so for example, things like doctors, lawyers, anything like in wider healthcare, if we're thinking about education, if like, I mean, one that we've been recently looking at is architects. Architects get trained through tertiary qualifications. So really, if we're concerned about sort of the culture that we're seeing around us, we can really trace a lot of that back, I think, to the culture that's being sort of inculcated in universities.
mm,
So it really matters. And we believe in like the power of universities to be really positive actors in society in this way, in supporting people to be able to sort of contest ideas freely and to be able to kind of further the pursuits that matter to them in the institutions and the professions that they exist within. But the groundwork for that starts in the university, right? And
mm,
starts with experiencing that environment where they can learn how to do that. They can learn how to contend and grapple with challenging ideas, with challenging conversations, with debate and discourse. That's
mm.
where all of it starts. So yeah, we think it's really important for that reason. And so we're not um, we're not trying to sort of lampoon universities. We're trying to restore them to what we believe that they could and should be because it matters just so
Mm.
very.
So, if it doesn't pass, yeah, what do you think will then be the status quo for academics who perhaps do buck the trend and do things differently, or stand up for their beliefs? What do you think could be the could be what the result for them?
Well, I would say we'd probably just continue to see the continuation of the trend that we've been seeing that I think is serious cause for concern.
Okay.
Serious. I mean, like I can just run a couple of kind of numbers by you from internal surveys, for example. So the University of Auckland Law School in 2023, we had only 15% of academics agreeing with the statement, I feel able to respectfully voice my views without fear of any negative impact. Um, I find that seriously troubling if we've only got 15% of academics who can actually voice their views without feeling fearful of that. And I think if we don't intervene in that situation, I see no reason why that wouldn't just continue to worsen. And we've seen a number of deplatforming situations happening in recent years, which is really closing down this conversation. So, I mean, there's always the risk of that sort of trend continuing. There are concerning trends that I think will just continue to entrench.
If people want to find out more about this bill, I know that it's open for submissions for a few more days. Can anyone head to the website, the Parliament website, to have their say?
Absolutely, yeah. So if it's on the Parliament website, so if anyone was to just do a search for the Education and Training Amendment Bill, that should come up straight away. I've also sent a link through, so I'm hoping perhaps you might be able to connect your audience with that as well. Um, yeah, really encourage people to make submissions because I think sometimes people can sort of feel like if they're not actively connected to the university space themselves, that it's sort of like an abstract concern. But actually, anyone who is concerned about what we're seeing in the cultural climate right now, I think there is a connection to what's going on in the universities. And so we really like encourage people to express their kind of thoughts about that. We've got some advice, a few suggestions for if people want to make submissions themselves on the FSU website. So yeah, encourage people to really have a voice in this. It matters for all of us, actually.
Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.